Well, hey everyone, we're back with our second installment of the listing management series.
Yep.
And we picked up our conversation with a discussion about eras and the changes that are going on the market. And today we want to start getting a little bit practical as we dig into, I guess, the first of several topics related to this discussion. And that's about how to reset or really set seller expectations effectively in this new environment.
Yeah, I agree. And this is where we get to have a little fun, getting super practical. The eras conversation was all foundational. Now we get to talk about what we actually do with our sellers. This is fun.
Let me try get the bottom line up front. We're headed into a new chapter. Mm-hmm. It's the new normal.
The new normal.
And one of the first skills we got to brush off is our capacity to effectively get into the minds of our clients, understand where they're at, but also create a runway and a path for how they need to engage with this journey that we're about to go on as a seller.
Yeah, I feel like it sets them up for better success and everybody up for better success when you reorient how you talk about these expectations. Yeah.
And because of where we've been, it's been the better part of a decade since we've seen, since we've been in a heyday of seller market and instantaneous sales, fast pace. And then it's been another 5 to 10 years since we've seen what we would consider a normal market.
Yeah.
So I think that this is for sure one of the skills that has either gotten super dusty or just frankly,
never had to learn it.
We've never had to learn how to do this effectively. So I think where I want to start here is there's an old quote that I stole from Buffini. I'm not going to try an Irish accent here, but I think it was in one of the early 100 Days to Greatness classes, and it was conflict arises when expectations differ.
That's so good.
And I think it's the right tee up here because obviously we're talking about setting seller expectations. And so Our problem here is that the set of expectations that have been embedded into the psyche of many of our sellers, either they don't have any expectations, but probably they do.
Oh yeah, they do subconsciously, or whether they know them or not. Yes, they do.
And the burden really is on us, especially in a time of change, to be hyper intentional about flushing out those hidden assumptions and reestablishing a series of assumptions that we need to use as anchors along the way. So I want to get into this idea of anchors. Do you remember in the psychology course we talked about anchoring? And I think the exercise, this is a famous experiment, but we played a game in the room and we actually split the room in two, and I gave half of the room a question. And the question was, how tall is the tallest redwood?
Yep.
And one half of the room, it said, is it taller or shorter than 250 feet? Mm-hmm. And the other half of the room, it said, how tall is the tallest redwood? Is it taller or shorter than 1,500 feet? Mm-hmm. And all that did was establish an anchor in their minds. Yeah. And then when you get them, the next question is, how tall is the tallest redwood? And we have them put a number in. And the one half of the room, the number typically averages around 1,500. And the other half of the room, the number typically averages around 250. Mm-hmm. Is what we've done is we've set an anchor in people's minds. And anchoring is a hugely important psychological concept.
Yeah.
And no one's immune, right? So we all have these embedded anchors. And I think that's the right framework to be thinking about this. And where I want to go, bottom line, is I want to reset. I want to train us and think about some of the anchors that we're going to have to intentionally reset. Now, you're all going to have slightly different approaches to this. Yes. Our goal is not to give you verbatim scripts.
Right.
Our goal is to have you start recognizing the anchors that are going to be implicit inside of people's thinking, and then to structure your communication with them in a way that we're always attacking or resetting those assumptions.
Yes.
In a way that's going to make our lives and their lives easier as we navigate this now extended listing cycle.
Yeah, I'm excited for this timeline rhythm of where we're going to, because that is a completely different reset of my framework for how I've communicated this as well. So I feel like these are really good anchors to set along the way. So yeah.
And maybe it's worth saying where these anchors have come from, whether you know you have them or not. The news has certainly, and maybe I need to set this up better. For 10 years now, we've had this market that's been super positive.
For sellers specifically.
Absolutely. If you bought at any point in that 10 years, you have an anchor right away on your past experience.
Yes.
How did it go when you bought was you had to be absolutely Johnny on the spot. You had to move super fast, and you paid full price with multiple offers or more.
Yeah.
So this is now a very deeply embedded anchor because it's not just one you heard from the news.
You felt it.
You lived it.
Yeah.
So we've got past experience, I think anecdotal evidence from what other people have told you, what friends and family have
What
experienced.
realtors are posting on social media
Absolutely.
about what's
Social
happening.
media, marketing, all of that. And we've still got this going on. So let's remember that we're living in this bifurcated space where we're still seeing ads saying sold in one day, full price, at the same time as stuff sitting for 120 days. And then even the news cycle, it takes a while. The news is turning. But right now, in the context of all the things going on in the world, the amount of real estate in media that's being taken up by, hey, things are slowing down.
Yes.
It's not as top of mind as it
No,
needs to
I would
be.
agree. You'd have to be specifically listening to the real estate coaches right now to hear anything about this, I think.
So one more thing on anchors that I want to say. I want to think about what are we actually trying to accomplish as we now enter these conversations, set new expectations in their mind, and maybe reconfigure some of these anchors that they have, whether they know it or not.
Yep.
The first thing we're trying to do is I think of this like we're trying to create a runway or a roadmap.
Yeah.
We are starting to realize there's going to be a longer road.
Yes.
It's going to be a little windy, and it's going to be different than maybe what they're thinking. And so I need to, at the very beginning, it's kind of like going on a road trip and you think it's going to take 10 minutes, but this is going to be like multiple pit stops. You're going to need snacks. And so I think that's the first one is set their expectations for how
more of a journey than that short trip. Yeah.
The other thing I think we're working to do, if we do this effectively in our consultations and our discussions, is we're trying to flush out
old
embedded
thinking.
assumptions.
Yes.
Old or faulty or it might not even be old. It might be fresh, but they've just heard anecdotally from one side of the story. And so I think flushing this out up front is now necessary.
Yep.
And then obviously what we're endeavoring to do is preemptively cut out future frustration. Conflict arises when expectations differ.
Yes.
And what I want to say to that is I want everyone to remember that our ultimate goal with every seller is not to sell the house. I mean, it is to sell the house, but as one of the benchmarks along the way to a bigger goal, which is to win an advocate.
Win an advocate, build a tribe,
You can sell the house, but lose the advocate. And the advocate will be won or lost based on their felt experience. And that's the fourth thing I want to say here, is that I've got this little formula in my brain.
Yeah.
Your felt experience is roughly proportionate to, and then I've got a numerator and a denominator again, your actual outcome divided by your expectations.
Yeah.
Your actual outcome might be great, but it's going to be divided by your expectations.
What they were prepared for.
Well, you may get 2% under asking after 35 days, and it might actually be a terrific outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were anticipating something significantly different than that, it's going to create a comparison point for you that might seem super negative. And so we've got to flush out these embedded things. We've got to create a proper runway so that we've got the runway we need to get this plane off the ground. And we've got to recognize that advocacy is going to be won or lost based on the expectations, regardless or despite
of the good or bad outcome.
How we actually do over the journey.
Yeah.
The goal is an advocate, I think
Always.
this is our bread and butter, right?
Yes.
Okay, so anything you want to add there before I jump into the three anchors that I think we need to be resetting?
No, that phrase really is what hits home for me. Conflict arises when expectations differ. So I think that's just, if you can get that in your head and flush out, it is really the flushing out of what may be in their head. So it's about better consultative questions and pulling out of them what they're thinking and then kind of reorienting that. So have your mindset on that. Like that to me is the quote that makes sense for all of this.
Yeah, this really is a time for the idea of being a consultative seller. It's not a seller, a consultative agent, a consultative expert to rise to the top.
Yes.
We really need to become better consultants.
Yes, exactly.
So here's my suggestion to you guys. There might be several others, but there are at least three principal anchors that I think we need to be intentionally targeting. I've got my little sniper gun out right now, and I'm thinking about this.
These three things specifically, yep.
Yeah, I'm engaging in conversations up front, and I need to approach this discussion, this battle, understanding that if I don't reestablish at least these three anchors, I'm setting myself up for potential future conflict.
Yep.
And so the first one is going to be just the timeline. And this is maybe the most common one that we're thinking of when we think, okay, the market's shifted, and we're thinking days on market.
You have to readjust their days on market, yeah.
And so I think that's the easy one. several thoughts here. I think we need to be very intentional in these initial discussions about dropping little seeds along the way.
Yeah.
You know, on the handout we've got here, for example, I think in my discussion about how we're going to go about selling the property, we're obviously going to discuss price, and we're going to discuss how we're going to market, and we're going to discuss and then we're going to say, guys, and here's the other thing that we're going to do a really good job of together is we're going to work really, really intentionally on keeping this open channel of communication between us so that we can be measuring the water temperature as we move along. So here's a couple things we're going to be doing. And I'm going to say, one, we're going to establish a weekly time. If you're okay with this is my preference.
Yes.
To have a quick conversation on the phone to discuss what's happened in that week. And we're going to do that every week throughout the journey. So right away, what I've done is I've already planted a seed. Wait, this is going to take multiple weeks.
Every week we're going to talk. Nope. Yep.
But every week we're talking. The next thing I'm going to say is, and guys, what I love to do with my clients that they find really helpful is we can make it day 30 or day 21. I love day 21, which means every 3 weeks, every 21 days, we're going to work to get face to face. And we're going to assess everything. We're going to assess the lay of the land,
all the things.
assess the comps, assess the competition, where we're at. And that's going to be our opportunity to assess everything and maybe make adjustments to our positioning. Now, that sounds like what I'm doing here is like setting up for a price reduction. But really what I'm doing is I'm establishing that we're going to be working in 21-day cycles.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
For many of them, this is already going to be you're going to see a blank stare. And
like what do you mean 21 days down the road?
I'm expecting to be in my future house in 21 days. And then the next thing I'm going to say might be something along the lines of the idea of working in increments, where some of you might actually want to put this in your buyer presentation, where we review the first 30 days as the period of time where we're presenting ourselves to the market and reading the reaction of the market. The second 30 days is where we're going to then take in that data and consider whether or not we need to make adjustments.
Yes.
Now, that might conflict with the 21-day thing, so you need to figure out which timeline you're going to work on.
Yep.
But either way, what I'm suggesting is that we're anticipating that it's likely to take at least 30 to 60 days for us to even get an effective read
on what the market is telling us.
How the market is responding to our pricing. And that is a dialogue that was super important 20 years ago when I was riding my horse to my listing presentations.
I have definitely never used that.
It's gone. And it doesn't matter about 30 or 60 or 21. What matters is the idea that our price, and we're going to get into this in a future episode, our price is not there to be perfect. It's there to
test the market,
present, and then see how the market reacts or responds. And then adjusting to that isn't failing. Adjusting to that is the game.
Is the normal, is the thing that we need to go do.
It's a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
We put out our conversation to the market. We see how the market responds, and then we adjust so that we move with it and dial in where we need to be.
Yeah, on this, this resource to me was super helpful when seeing this timeline with these I love the title, so I want to say them, that 0 to 30 days, and again, play with the numbers here, but the 0 to 30 being launch phase, I really liked that idea. I can imagine being at my presentation, drawing this out on a piece of paper with my client, talking about launch phase and really discussing what that looks like, what that is, and then evaluation phase.
What are we doing in launch phase? We're exposing it to the market. We're seeing
how the market reacts to what we are putting out.
And we're trying to get it in front of a critical mass of people so that enough people have seen it and reacted to it and responded to it that we can start to gauge how the market feels about where we're positioned.
And then you have that information, right, in that launch phase, and then you're going into evaluation phase. I just really like that terminology. Evaluate what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, what the market is telling us, and then we get into adjustment phase. So I just feel like those words are super helpful for me and would be really good anchor points for a client as well. I would draw that out, honestly.
And again, you're all going to do this differently, and there's no perfect way to do this. But what needs to be clear is that the first anchor that we need to reset is an embedded anchor that exists in most people's minds right now
regarding time,
on the notion that it's going to be quick. And I think the caveat that we have to add to this is, but sometimes they may say, but what if it sells in a week? And you say, well, that is a possibility. And if we present it well, and if our price is positioned well enough, that is still absolutely a possibility. But it's not what we're seeing normally right now in your price range.
Yes.
And so this isn't to say that everything needs to be super negative and we necessarily push for 90 days on market. It's that we have to at least plant that in their mind as the more
a possible expectation, right?
Or more probable.
Yeah, yeah.
And if that's not in their mind as more probable, you are setting yourself up for frustration, whether they say it to you or not.
Completely agree.
The second anchor that we have to reset, which I think is a little more obscure, is this HGTV notion that we're going to present it to the market, and then there's going to be this line of people. Because every time I go to my dentist and I sit in the waiting room, I'm watching HGTV, and every time there's an open house, there's 25 people in line waiting back to back.
At the door.
And unfortunately, HGTV has been true in many regards for the last 10 years. There really has been a flurry of activity, a frenzy. Literally, we're marketing properties and saying no offers accepted for 4 or 5 days until we review them all. This is language that people have now heard and seen. And frankly, it's what they did when they bought. So we have to help people understand that volume and pace of activity may not be what we expect, because there's going to be nothing worse than going through the first week or two and we're not
with
at the
very
point,
little or no activity. Like, that's going to stress them out.
If you're expecting 3 or 4 showings a day and you're getting 1 a week, you're going to be incredibly frustrated with your agent.
Yes.
And the problem is, as agents, we might also be frustrated. I'm going to get to that in a minute, because our own assumptions need to be readjusted here. But the truth is that in a normal market, for those of you that weren't around back in the dinosaur era, in a normal market, that is the pace at which showings sometimes happen. And so it took that pace of showings, it took that over a certain amount of time to create a critical mass of exposure. In order to get to the breaking point or the critical mass where an offer shows up.
Yeah.
So showings and offers. I think there's 2 points here. One, some listings aren't going to expect that flurry, and I think we need to set an anchor for what is a realistic expectation.
What's it going to feel like in this first couple weeks, right?
And it might take a minute or two, a week or two, for this to get enough exposure to get, and some of that might be, it's a holiday weekend coming up. And so I do think volume of showings. And the second thing is regarding offers. What I wrote here is that an offer, and this is counterintuitive to most of you, I understand, but an offer is a lagging indicator of being priced right. And what I mean by that is, most of you have heard this at some point. You've got a frustrated seller and they're saying, well, yeah, maybe we're slightly overpriced, but why don't they just bring me an offer so we can negotiate?
Yes.
And what sellers don't understand is that that's not how it works.
Yeah.
If something's slightly high, it doesn't get as many showings. If something's slightly high, people are more inclined to want to offer on something else because they don't want to offend you, and it feels weird to come in super low.
They are trained to do that, and it may not even be in their search, because if it's slightly high, it's outside of their realm of even being possible.
So we need to launch, we need to expose,
yes,
we need to evaluate, and then we need to adjust, because when we adjust, we get it to the range where the offers start to show up. We get it to the range where the showings start to show up. And again, this is just not how it's been for a while. So I think this is big, because the frustration is building.
Oh yeah.
During those first few weeks, and it's not just we haven't sold it yet. It's where are all the people?
Yeah. Why is no one looking at my house? Yep.
And so I think that's a huge reset up front. Any more on that one?
No, I mean, there's a point in here too. I think there's discussing buyer mindset is important in this market as well, because there are more options and because affordability is high, they are taking their time and they're making sure they're making the right choice. They're feeling the slowdown in the way that they are looking and the way that they're going about it. So I think discussing the buyer mindset there is important on that feeling of showings and offers as well.
Today's buyers move slower and with more caution, especially in higher price ranges.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's real.
Dial it in, figure out your scripts, but these are all the seeds that you need to be planting along the way.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's really good. And if you're not following along, there's a great resource here that I think
really good.
Maps this out for you guys. So that's 1 and 2. The first is the timeline. The second is the actual amount of activity they should expect during the sales process.
Yeah.
And then the third is, I think, an anchor that we called, responsive pricing strategy. And I've kind of touched on this already.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just resetting the notion that price is this carrot that you put out to the marketplace, and then the market brings you offers, and there's this massive, sexy negotiation, and the agent pulls out these super duper poker tricks, and somehow we end up, on the winning side of this strategic negotiation. It's just not that sexy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really quite simple. We need to evaluate a starting point.
Yeah.
We need to put it out like we've said. And I think we need to start understanding that pricing is not some fixed point that we're going to market our property at. It's fluid. I think we need to help them understand that we need to approach our pricing fluidly with a reactive mindset to see how the market responds. I think we need to reestablish the notion that list price to sales price ratios aren't what they thought.
Yes, correct.
So I think up front, we need to show a bunch of comps that have sold and demonstrate that things are not anymore, especially in certain price points.
Yes.
Selling for asking price.
And I see that as well as like how many price reductions did they take before they got to that list price to sales price ratio.
That was the next point.
Yeah.
We need to understand that listing price reductions are not a failure in this kind of environment.
This is what is happening.
They are part of the strategy. Well, it's what's happening. It's also how you play the game.
Yes.
The game is establish a starting point. Don't go too high necessarily because you might miss your opportunity.
Yep.
There's a finite number of buyers buying and you don't want to miss the month of July because now we're in August.
Yeah.
So don't start too high. But also we're going to react and respond to the market, and reducing or adjusting our price isn't a function of failing. It's the game of dialing it in as the market moves and reacts and responds. So fluidity, I think, is the idea here. Yeah. And this is not embedded in the minds of most sellers. And I'm going to say it's not embedded in the minds of most agents.
Us. I was thinking of all the times that in the last year that we've asked our agents to be flexible and nimble. I kind of feel like that's where this is, like, be with me on this journey and let's be flexible. Let's be nimble. Let's see how the market responds. I like that. Those were the words that was kind of popping into my head as you were saying those things, that we're asking them to be in that journey with us by resetting some of these things. Yeah.
It feels like the art form here for us as we, hone in these skills is going to be not to approach this like a preacher or a instructor.
This is not a science.
There's that. I'm just thinking more even in how we communicate this to our sellers. I think it's better to suggest that it's going to take longer than to tell them that this is going to take longer. Because number one, you might be wrong.
Yes.
And then they're going to look at you and say, hey, like, whatever, you're just faking.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm suggesting that what we need to do is imply we're going to coach them to expect a longer timeline without explicitly saying, guys, it's going to take a long timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is about dialing in how we communicate what the process is going to look like. And while talking about our marketing process, we're actually communicating timeline without
the
necessarily
entire time as well.
Same thing when we pull out the comps. I pull out the sold comps and I say, hey guys, this one here took this long to sell and it's sold at this list price to sale price. No one thought to point out list price to sale price in the last few years because it didn't freaking matter. The answer was full price or more.
Yeah.
Now it matters, especially in certain price points. So I think we do the same thing with actives. We show the actives that we're competing with. We show how long they've been sitting. And right away, what we're doing, whether we know it or not, is we're planting a seed. We're chiseling away at one set of assumptions.
Oh, that's the days on market for these ones that I'm competing with? Yes, it's definitely changing their mindset on
I'm going to suggest everyone needs to invest in a highlighter set.
Oh, I love highlighters.
And as we print our comps, I always think you approach your listing presentations with a little stack of sold comps, a little stack of active comps, and frankly, a little stack of
pending or canceled. Yeah.
Canceled comps.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to demonstrate several that were over, that came down, but they came down too slow. They didn't adjust effectively. And now they're maybe off market and back on market with somebody else after 6 months.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get to some of the other conversations when we dig into more of these pricing conversations, because there's so many things that I see in that space with using your market absorption and which side of this do we want to be on in the next 90 days. And that is a 90-day thinking tool originally. So I really feel like those are super exciting conversations to brush off and consultations to brush off, I think, too.
I think the struggle with all of this is that this sounds like a lot of work. And I mean, it's not, but it certainly, it's an adjustment. It's a change. It's new stuff to have to figure out. And it sounds like a whole bunch of communication you need to figure out up front. Here's what I want to say. You're going to pay the price either way.
Yeah.
You're either going to pay it up front by making these adjustments and being intentional in setting the stage, or you're going to pay for it on the back end and along the way with pissed off people.
It's going to be brutal. Yeah.
And I don't blame them. Like, it's on us. This is our job. This is what we're paid for.
Definitely.
And we tend to get frustrated with our clients along the way because they've got unrealistic expectations, but you're the professional and the market's changed and we're struggling to keep up with the changes.
Yeah.
Obviously someone that bought one house 10 years ago and now is selling it with you and they're trusting you to guide them. They're paying for you to upfront help them overcome these obstacles. And it might lead to some frustrating conversations, but it's much better to have that frustrating conversation on the front end than deal with them learning to hate you throughout the process.
Yeah, I think that reminds me of like we're going to get to like some of these kind of dialogues and things that you can be working on strategically and practically that are not, I don't think they're big and scary, because I think I would rather do the work now than have that be the problem. But I do think of that I would rather be honest up front when I set expectations than have them totally despise me by the time we get this done. Yeah, I like that expectations.
So I guess my only other thought on this, and then maybe you've got some practical guidance on other resources and stuff that we're putting in front of everyone. But my final point on this maybe is just to check yourself. Mm-hmm. I was about to quote Borat. Check yourself. I think we're the first problem here.
We have to change our anchors in our story.
I think so. I think that everything that I'm saying, I think most of you kind of understand and see, but if we have to work this intentionally about resetting these things in our sellers' minds, I could tell you that the anchors that you have on some of these are even deeper than those that your clients have. So anecdotally, we're starting to experience some of our stuff sitting longer, but I'm just a big fan of the word convictions. I think you need to develop some convictions and you need to be comfortable with the fact that, yes, some things sell quickly, but when they don't, that doesn't mean you failed on price.
Yeah.
You've got to overcome your own voices and recognize that this is a different environment, and things sitting for longer doesn't mean it's a failure. It means it's a moving target, and it means the market is a living, breathing organism right now. I wrote down, it's a market, it's not a math equation. Mm-hmm. You can't, for those of you that were like you, I need to get A+ in everything.
Like me. Mm-hmm.
For those of you that are nerds like that, this is one of those, like, you don't get to get this right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
It's a living, breathing conversation. You've got your perspectives. You've got what the seller desires and wants in terms of what they're hoping for a price. And then you've got a shifting environment of buyer sentimentality that's literally moving by the week.
Yeah.
And it's into that environment that we need to like check our own ego at the door and go, okay, my mastery here is not in finding the right price. My mastery is in guiding this human being, this emotional human being.
Yes.
This two emotional human beings.
Yeah, most likely.
With two different personalities, two different sets of expectations and histories through a very, very rough emotional process. And that's the mastery. That's what we get paid for. And that's what we need to really like lean into now. When you do that right, you win the people over. Even if it's bumpy along the way.
Yeah, it can be.
They thank you on the back end.
Yeah.
So check your own expectations and make sure that you're comfortable with 30, 60, 90 days on market. Make sure
100%.
that you're okay having these tough conversations, because this is what winning's going to look like for the next few years.
Yeah, yes, that definitely hits home for me. I think I said in the team meeting when we were talking about eras specifically, if I didn't sell a home in 30 days, it was my fault. It was my failure. And that timeline, even for me, on the front of this resource, really resets my thinking to more appropriate levels of thinking, and I have to be convicted in that to go have conversations with sellers that matter.
And it's so tricky right now, because if this was very, very clearly, guys, you gotta understand it's going to take 90 days. It's a slow market.
There isn't that necessarily.
It's bifurcated. Both options exist, and I just want to say that this is an opportunity to truly be a master then, because the mastery of being able to keep them stable psychologically and steady through this journey. While both of those options exist, I think it's just an opportunity to shine.
Absolutely.
And the harder the environment is to play in, the more experts win. Yes. And so be the expert.
Yeah.
So what's practical here? How do we brush this off further?
Yeah. I mean, I really think that you need to have this resource in front of you, because there's really good things, but tweak it and make it your own. But a lot of these key consultative questions that we've kind of put in here is a way to kind of flush out what the expectations are in their head, and to kind of figure out where you need to take them next. So the example of, I love this question, so I'm just going to read it. What's too long emotionally or financially for this to sit? Like, you're just trying to figure out their motivations there. You're just, again, consultative. I'm not telling anything. I'm just asking, and I'm digging for where they're starting from, what's their starting point, and where are they at really emotionally in their understanding and their needs and their wants and their desires in the process. So
I imagine
I love these
about their previous sale, like when
Yes.
they bought it. Well,
What did
tell
it-
me how that went down would be helpful as well.
Or even if you were there, maybe if you got to be the realtor who helped them buy it. Hey, remember when? Remember when? Like that's their anchor, kind of their anchor point there, but you can start. So just really good consultative questions. Again, most of these are just honestly asking questions and getting to the heart of where they're at. And then honestly, guys, what I would suggest, since it's probably been a while since you've really looked at your listing presentation, we kind of have an exercise here of what you can do to look at what you're doing, right? So write out, this is normally what my process looks like, or this is what it used to look like. I haven't done it for a while. So these are the things that I do want to make sure that I cover. And I would maybe think of these 3 anchoring questions that we have on the front of the resource as really important bullet points to include, right? Do you mention these timelines? Go back to those anchor points. This is my fault. That was a big one for me. What are you not saying that you probably should say, that you've maybe been avoiding as a conversation, and that's been what's hurt the relationship or the experience for that to win the advocate at the end of the day. So don't avoid those harder conversations. Do train yourself to have those up front, because it is going to set them and yourself up for more success in the long run. So what are you leaving open-ended? What are they probably just thinking or assuming? And then I really think you've mentioned this a couple times. This one is big for me. What are more visuals and information that you can bring with you to just really help tell the story and re-anchor where their starting point is from? So
yeah,
I think that the solds matter, but I really like and again, we'll get into this in some of our other ones, but the actives is what we're competing with actively. So those solds matter because we got to understand what sold, that list price to sales price ratio, price reductions. But our competition, what we're actively working against, is a reframing there too.
Talk about that. I'm looking at the table, and
Yes.
I used to lay the
Yes.
competition out, right?
Yes.
I'd lay them in a line,
Yes.
with the most competitive at the front, and then
Yep.
all the way down. And then I would take our listing and say, hey, where do we need to be in this line?
Yep.
But I think, and that's pricing. But what I want to touch on this is every one of those should have days on market
Yes.
highlighted.
Yep.
And then the same game with the solds. Actively print them out, put them on the table, spread them out, and highlight how long it took for them to actually close.
And I would add to that, I really like how many times would they adjust before they got to that list price to sales price ratio on those solds. I think that would be a super smart thing to add on those printouts. But yeah.
Do you have a practical way to pull average showing activity from showing time that you're aware of? Because that would be the other thing, is how do you get indications for people on what typical showing activity might. Now, anecdotally, if you do this for a living all day, you probably know.
Yeah. Because you're feeling it with your buyers maybe when you're out there. Honestly, I think the best way to do that is to see if you can reach out to some of your competition and say, hey, what's the activity been like on this one? I think that you have to have conversations with people, because there isn't really good data analysis within showing time that I'm aware of as far as how to figure out, other than what they have in KCM for general foot traffic, because they compile that as a whole, but it's not going to be specific to your market.
Just as simple as walking down the hall and saying to other agents with similarly priced listings.
I would even pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and talk to some of the other agents that are in the competition.
You've been getting?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, honestly, guys, exists in our tools, in Moxie Present and things like that. I can think of so many resources that are in there that I would go look at again and consider using again in your conversations, or for the first time if you haven't really looked at that. So yeah.
Okay, well, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think it's fun work.
We're starting at the beginning. Well, yeah, I love the idea of us becoming better consultants.
Yeah.
And that's really what I picture here. I think the biggest thing to avoid is, and maybe I said this earlier as well in a different way, we can't come in with a Gatling gun presentation or a PowerPoint. So
this is really we are in this together consultation. Yeah. Let's figure this out.
The art form isn't to create a whole bunch of scripts now that we just lob at our sellers. It's going to be figuring out a strategic and tactical way to engage in a really, really interesting dialogue back and forth. But if there's one takeaway today, it's understand these 3 anchors that are embedded into people's minds, and then find your way, a creative but helpful and relational way to ensure that you're attacking these at some point in your conversation with people.
Definitely.
Pay now or pay later. But
yeah.
That's a fun conversation. We got several more of these.
Several more. We have so much more to dig into.
And the good news is the listings aren't going away. The sellers aren't going away. And
it'll all still be helpful.
So I appreciate you guys listening and for being experts and for caring enough to want to be expert advisors for your clients.
Yeah.